Hello and welcome to the 15th episode of the A Cube Circus. I am joined, as always, by my co hosts, not guests, Xenaid and Denish. How are we doing today, guys?
Happy to be here. I'm glad that we finally graduated from guest to co-host. It only
You,
took
you did.
3 months.
And I am also joined today by a very special guest, runner of a lot of official Marvel Snap tournaments, including the Golden Gauntlet World Championship Series. It is GunnyT. Gunny, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk about the upcoming Golden Gauntlet and just stuff in general. I love Marvel Snap. This game is wildly amazing. I think it's super underrated. It's the best. It has fundamentally changed what I want out of a card game, and especially a digital card game.
Really loving Marvel Snap as well. It's actually my first card game. Like the only card games I
Wow,
played
that's
before
impressive.
Snap were like Hearthstone for like a day,
Okay.
maybe when I was younger. This is the first game I've had the opportunity to really like grasp and learn
Yeah.
the roots of. The only other one that was like kind of in contention is I played an old mobile game, Plants vs Zombies Heroes. That one was pretty
Yeah.
fun, but
No, I
yeah,
played Hearthstone for a bit. I played Magic Arena, like made it to the top ranks of both of those. Tried
nice.
Pokemon Pocket. So like those other two, Magic Arena and Hearthstone, great games, love them. Then just kind of got, out of them after being in there for a while. Played Snap, tried Pocket and was like, wow, I don't want to wait for my opponent's turn anymore. That sucks.
Yeah,
I can't play
It's
this game.
I mean, I prefer Snap compared to Coin Flip Simulator, but I mean,
yeah,
teach their own there. All right, so we've got a great podcast for you coming up today where we are going to talk about number one, why should you play in tournaments? It's a really fun thing, and we're going to talk all about that. And then we're also going to cover every single winning deck from the Golden Gauntlet and talk about how you can identify a good deck to play in the tournaments and also why tournaments are great if you're keeping up with Snap for all the years or even if you're just coming back from a break to the game. Tournaments are great for you. We ready to get into it?
I'm ready. Yeah.
yeah. Super
All
excited.
right.
Absolutely.
So, first thing we're going to do Golden Gauntlet Qualifier 3, the last qualification chance for the World Championships this November is coming up very soon. Gunny, why should people play in this tournament?
I think number one, community. Hands down, community. If you're listening to this podcast, like these are three members that love playing in our tournaments. There's tons of other content creators and great community members out there. And it's just such a fun way to like meet people who are also excited about the same thing that you're excited about. Playing Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap, is a digital card game. There's no chat feature like you might have in Hearthstone or in, Magic Arena, like I was talking about before. Just there's no chat feature, so you don't get to have that interaction with people. So bringing it into a tournament scene, you actually get to talk to your opponent and chat decks. Like maybe you have a really close game against somebody, and I've done that myself in some of the tournaments. I used to play in the Snap Judgments League whenever I was running those, and just some of the conversations I would have afterwards, talking about people's deck choices, and just how they're doing. It's just a really cool way to interact with the community.
Yeah, I think from the last tournament, GG2, one person I helped out, I missed checking, but Father Newman, he's like been streaming a lot, and he was playing this really funky V hand deck. It was his first like really competitive tournament, and he made it to top
Yeah,
16, I believe, right?
top
Yeah, top
8, I
eight.
believe.
Yeah, even top eight with aided with the deck, and like he was having a blast playing the game. There were misplays like here and there, but like he was having a fun playing, and he just like brought a deck. Really, we workshopped like 3 or 4 cards in it, and he played something that he made himself that he had a lot of fun trying to build and get working, and it worked wonders for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think even
I want to get his position correct.
to see what rank he got.
Oh, you can keep going, Denish. Yeah,
Yeah,
keep
for
going.
sure. I do think another
Father
another
Newman was
part of it,
15th.
15th place, which is top 16. But that's still really
Yeah,
good. That's
he made
that's
it to
impressive.
yeah, he made it out of Swiss.
hmm Making it out of Swiss is really like the real line. That's when you get put on the stream most of the time, right? That's the fun of it. But yeah, I find even the people that aren't like streamers or content creators. I played a guy, and I think it was Golden Gauntlet Qualifier 1, and then I played him in 2, and I played him again in 2. It was like I've queued him like 4 times now, and I'd never seen him before, but now I find the same person all the time all over like the official Marvel Snap Discord. He's in the Golden Gauntlet Discord. It's just a great place to meet new people. And as I've seen, because I've been around for a while, I've seen people come and go, and I mean, it really is an incredible community. It's very supportive, fun. The people are fun. It's just great to get into it, to be honest. So I'd say, even if you're not going to play in the tournament, which you absolutely should, because like, what's the worst that happens? You lose, and then you say, "Oh, okay," and then you get to talk to the people that beat you, and it's like new great people. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and another thing that's kind of cool is like I am now recognizing players whenever I'm playing on ladder, right? Some of my players, I get that fist bump or the finger point. It's just really cool to see them in the like in the game naturally, and getting to share like, hey, I know you, I recognize you. Like there's a personal connection there.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed like Deadpool's diner a lot because of that. Because like the trading that was going on, like I made some connections through that I
Yeah.
like wouldn't necessarily have made. It's like emoting is sometimes like a taboo in like the high infinite community. Like sometimes there's some players that really hate it, and like for those players they just mute. But like me and Denish, we emote each other every time we play.
Yeah.
Like we're like emote each other, snap, hello, and it's like at the end of the day, we got to remember that like this is just a video game, and I think like getting to play at high stakes in like high infinite and with matchmaking being like as wide as it is sometimes, like you got to play like we're at rank 10,000. Sometimes you play against a rank 50 player, and it's just like we're out here like sometimes enjoying the game. Like not everyone in the top 100 is like Giga Sweat try hard.
All right. I don't know if I giga try hard with my choices of decks lately, but I do agree that there's a lot of community when it comes to tournaments and stuff like that. I mean, after Golden Gauntlet, I've had some like talks in like the Top Deck chats, which is the platform used that Golden Gauntlet runs on, and it's a lot of, "Hey, I thought your deck was cool. This is interesting." I had one person get mad at me because I was running Shadow King and they were running like Black Panther Zola. I found that one pretty funny. But other than that, I mean, you're playing a lot of people, and they have all these decks. Like I see so much more variety in decks when I play Golden Gauntlet, because a really big factor on what people bring to Golden Gauntlet I've found is their comfort level with the deck. And I've also experienced this myself. If I pick up a deck 2 days before Golden Gauntlet, I'm not going to be very comfortable with it. But if I pick up a deck that I've been playing for a while, I'm going to be much more comfortable with that deck for Golden Gauntlet. So I found that a lot of people bring decks that they've been playing for weeks, they've been playing for months to these Golden Gauntlet events, and I find them doing pretty well with them. Even if they're playing a deck with newer cards, still the same old archetype. Like the one, me, Denish, and Xenaid have all qualified for the World Championships in November. The deck I used to qualify was a Moon Girl deck, and I've been playing Moon Girl the entire month beforehand. So I found that like comfort level factor, like that's very important when you're playing these decks, and you get to see all kinds of corners. You see people playing Black Panthers Zola. You see people playing Discard, Fee Hand. You can see Super Giant. You can see a ton of different decks that people enjoy playing. So not only is there a diverse community that you're getting with these tournaments, but you're also seeing a lot of diverse and different decks.
Yeah, absolutely. To build a little bit on what Smlz was saying, with the decks, you'll see a lot of decks, but also you can kind of bring anything. Like I see people qualifying on Agamotto. People are qualifying on Khonshu. I think someone won on Khonshu, which we'll get to. And like the decks that are winning are not the most like end of turn, modern, buy all the cards, these newer decks. It's a lot of the older ones, which we'll cover a little bit as we get into the specific decks in a second. But yeah, just bring whatever you're comfortable with, and you'll probably do fine.
Yeah, so we talked a bit about community just being a big attractive factor. And kind of what I want to put there is like, you don't necessarily need to worry about winning. Winning is absolutely, that's the icing on the cake. I've done it. I've got to experience this whole thing, and I made it, right? But I think just coming to experience it is valuable. But that being said, you do want to win, right? That feels really good. So I would say this: you have to go 5-1. If you've ever won an infinity border, that means you can qualify for worlds, right? And that is a very difficult thing. I know a lot of people have not ever gotten an infinity border, but it's very possible. It is definitely very possible. So not only are you investing in just having a good time, meeting people in the community, but it's doable. It's really doable. If you have a deck that you think you're pretty good with, like you can qualify for Worlds, which is a pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to like transcend like the casual like gaming sphere because Snap at the end of the day is like a mobile game. It's a lot of people's toilet games. I know it's my game where I just click the button to hear the word snap, 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 and then be able to transition, kind of humble yourself into being like, hey, I'm not playing like as well as I could be, and then like sitting down in this tournament format where you get to play people who are like markedly maybe better than you, maybe like have more experience in conquest formats, right? Like I think a lot of people are very used to playing ladder and don't play very much conquest, and so I think like going into these game modes, like the deck I brought that I qualified for with, and like my personal challenge is always qualifying with Sauron, right? But there's things that made Sauron better for conquest than for ladder, and I chose to bring cards like Luna Snow, like Legion, especially like Iron Patriot. Those are like very interesting cards because there's not the element of surprise. I think Denish and I are very well known one tricks. So like on ladder we don't have that anyway. But in tournament with an open deck list format, there's like decks that would win that wouldn't necessarily win. Like Butt has won with his patented Pixie Hulkling, right? Or was he playing
Yeah.
Pixie? Yeah, he was playing
Yeah, he's
Hulkling
playing
for
Pixie
sure.
and Emperor Hulkling just because of the
Yes.
snap equity he gets out of it.
And I think like there's things that make Conquest a markedly different format than Ladder. And so like even if you feel like you don't do that well on Ladder, like if you feel like confident in your gameplay, you know when to snap or retreat on your game plans, just bring whatever deck you want to play, and then like try to sit down and focus, for extended duration of time. I know a lot of people that's not their favorite part about the Marvel snap, like sitting down and playing for a while. But I found like grinding through and like feeling good about your plays, like looking at the game from an objective standpoint, rather than being like, "Dang, I got unlucky. My opponent got so lucky," and like being able to kind of like assign skill elements to different aspects of the gameplay is a really rewarding experience in the conquest game mode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Conquest versus Ladder, there's some similarities between both, but there's also some differences. One thing I think very specific about tournament level, about this tournament Conquest format specifically, is the open deck list. So normally in Conquest matches, you can reasonably pack in a lot of surprise cards. So surprise cards, maybe throwing a Quake in your deck, maybe a Legion, something like that. Something that will surprise the opponent, catch them off guard, so you can win 4 or off of them in this sort of ladder form, in this sort of conquest open deck list format, what you can do is you can use cards like Iron Patriot, Hulkling, Copycat, Arishem, use those cards to be able to retain that like surprise factor that you otherwise can't see in an open deck list. They can see your Legion, they can see your Quake, they can play around it. They cannot play around an Arishem generated Quake, which we have already seen in the Golden Gauntlet 2 champion semifinals. So being able to use this sort of surprise factor, I think, is a very important part of Golden Gauntlet, specifically the open deck list format. And also, I think the distinction between ladder and conquest is amazing. You might not be able to climb ladder all the way to the high ranks, all the way to the top, but there have been players that aren't even ranked in the top 1,000. I mean, the latest one, he just came back, the latest winner of the Electric Flame, I talked to him. He just came back from a break from the game. He came back. He liked his discard deck, so he decided to play in Golden Gauntlet because he found out through in game, and he ended up winning it all. You don't need to be as high ranked on ladder as me, Denish, and Zen are to win Golden Gauntlet. All you need to do is have a deck, confidence, and a game plan to win.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting point you bring up about the difference between conquest and ladder. I question for the group here: which one do you think prepares you better for the other? Does conquest prepare you better for ladder, or does ladder prepare you better for conquest?
My take here is ladder prepares you better for conquest because you're facing a more diverse pool of decks quicker. You're
Mm,
facing more matchups quicker, so you're able to better identify your win conditions and your loss conditions and snap conditions, all that stuff quicker, so that in Conquest you're able to effectively manage your cubes. And
mm,
also, you only get one shot on ladder. instead of a multiple battles and conquest. So there's really no ebbs and flows with the conquest format. I think ladder better prepares you for conquest as well, because on ladder you can distinguish, okay, what are my 4 cube games going to look like? What are my 2 cube games going to look like? What are my 1 cube games going to look like? Instead of them already knowing your deck and they can leave early. I mean, that is true on ladder. They can know your deck and leave early, but it's also training you to surprise snap on ladder. The
Yeah.
leveraging those surprises is very, very useful, as we've seen.
I have a little bit of an interesting take on this. I feel like ladder is almost split into two separate game modes where there's lower ladder and upper ladder. And by that, it probably cuts off around infinite or once you start recognizing people.
Yeah.
And I think the lower ladder definitely prepares you for conquest in the sense that you're getting your plays down, your snaps, your retreats, and as you're doing better on lower ladder, you'll start doing better in conquest. But then I don't think conquest necessarily will help at lower levels of ladder because it's not necessarily the lines as much that matter, it's more the snapping and retreating. Whereas in conquest, you need to have the lines right every single time because you're on a limited resource. And then in Conquest, I think it almost prepares you for Upper Ladder because Upper Ladder just turns into. Once again, it's not exactly comparable to Ladder, but it's similar to Conquest in the sense that, okay, a lot of the time I know what my opponent's playing, and so now I can start using these Conquest tricks that we have to on like ladder games where I'll queue against Xenaid and I'll know, okay, I can just play my Giganto because I know what list he's running. He doesn't have Shang, and so I don't have to worry about it getting shanged. Or similar things to that. Obviously, it's not usually a Giganto Shang-Chi interaction. That's not very common. That's kind of like, I think I might be the only deck running Giganto right now. But it's that style of low ladder preparing you for Conquest, but then Conquest kind of helping you out with upper ladder as well.
Almost consider it like meta ladder versus like off meta ladder, right? Because I think what you're talking about is in upper ladder, it's almost like an open deck format because you kind of know what people are playing. You're seeing people enough to know the tricks they might have in their deck, something like that. Is that what you're getting at, Denish?
Absolutely, and even if you don't know the deck, you can usually figure it out by like turn 2 or 3. It's pretty set. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a muscle that you learn on ladder that you don't really learn on conquest as much. Is like, hey, turn 2, like maybe the first game of a conquest match, but like on ladder, like turn 2, turn 3, if you see Ravona, what does that mean? Yeah, if turn 3 you see on conquest, I don't think you're trying to hide information as much from your opponent, especially because you know the information will be like recognized eventually. I do think deck building for ladder is better than is way different than deck building for conquest, because when you're
True.
actually deck building for conquest, you want to have these pieces of information asymmetry. Like, I think the best card in the game is Iron Patriot right now. Legion is very disgusting because there's interactions that people just don't play a lot of locations. So when you play more games, um, the Legion like interactions matter a lot more as a player. And so if you just know them better than your opponent, you can like minimize variance just by slamming Legion on a location. But I think if you're deck building for Conquest, it actually helps you a lot more, but it doesn't help you for ladder, because the deck that you're playing doesn't matter in any individual ladder game as much. It matters more in every individual Conquest game, because you're carrying the same deck turn to turn with your opponent recognizing elements and learning how to play around it. But versus in ladder, like if you're running like Iron Patriot, your opponent can just retreat on it, or like the variance from the Iron Patriot is like a one instance, whereas if you carry the variance across a series, you can utilize it as a weapon in your favor.
Here's a little bit of a counterpoint for folks that maybe are like trying to get a bit better. What do you feel about Conquest helping you on ladder because you'll get repetitions, right? So I'm playing against a V-hand deck. I get several games against that V-hand deck to figure out what my winning line is against that deck. So whenever I see it on ladder, I know immediately I see that V-hand on 2. I'm like, all right, I need to hold X card because that's what wins me this match.
That might be true, I think, to some regard. I just play a lot of games, so I don't think it matters for me.
True.
I play so many games of Marvel Snap, so I don't like need that sample size reduction in order to like test specific matchups. I do think Conquest is a better like format for testing matchups. But if you want to build decks that are like for tournament format that are like good against the field, I think ladder is a better place for that. Like not that's for more of a deck building thing, right? But yeah, for your purposes of learning lines, I also think sometimes it's limiting, because you're limiting yourself to one specific matchup. Whereas if you're playing
Right.
against different matchups, you learn your win conditions. Just like, okay, like against a high power output deck, right? Like what can V hand do? Against a no interaction deck, what can V hand do? Like
Mhm.
losing four, like 10 game or 10 points in a row against negative in a conquest match for V hand. It's like, what are you learning as a V hand player? That you should have put Mobius in, right? So I think it's useful in some matchups and
Yeah.
then like counterproductive in others.
Okay. Cool.
I
I
think
do
another
also.
take on this as well is that you're only playing one build of the same deck in Conquest. Whereas on Ladder, you might face, okay, I'm playing V Hand Moon Girl, I'm playing V
Mm.
Hand with Just Like Hood Misery, all that stuff. So I think that being able to play on Ladder and play against multiple versions of the same deck, getting those repetitions in on multiple versions and not just one is better. Because you might think, oh, my win condition with V Hand is having a Quinjet down because V Hand doesn't run Mobius. And all of a sudden, you queue up for your first Golden Gauntlet game and it's V Hand with Mobius.
Oh
And
yeah.
all of a sudden, you don't know what to do. So I think that doing it on ladder is better because Snap is a very diversified game. It's not often you're going to see the same deck. The only times you're really going to see the same deck is if, say, you two people look at Untapped and they see the same stats. Two people go to a YouTube video and they see the same deck. You're not going to see the same exact 12 cards that often. Like, I would bet against playing against the same exact list of 12 cards twice in a tournament. So I really think that when it comes to practicing with repetitions, ladder is also better just because you're getting those repetitions again, although against the same archetype, against different versions of the deck.
Okay.
Absolutely. Another point for ladder, I think, is learning snap patterns because ladder and conquest both have very different snap patterns. Because we don't need to go too far into conquest math because that's a rabbit hole and a half. But getting an 8 cuber on ladder is a lot easier than getting an 8 cuber in conquest because, like, if you're on round 3, it's almost impossible at that point because there just aren't that many cubes. And so it almost feels like you have to play both game modes to get a better grasp on both game modes. They don't even transfer that well, especially cube wise. But I will concede if you're more likely to get better at ladder by playing conquest than you are at conquest by playing ladder. That's how I feel. Smz, do you want to start the transition?
Yeah, of course. So, next thing we're going to talk about here is Golden Gauntlet winning decks. So, there has been 4 Golden Gauntlet events. Number 1, number 2, and then qualifiers 1 and 2. Let's start by covering the first Golden Gauntlet winner all the way back in June, if I remember correctly.
I believe so. June 5th, if I'm not mistaken.
Bounce. Now, this was a very interesting deck at the time based on how few high series and new cards were in this deck. I know there was a running joke around the community that there was going to be a snap pack for the Golden Gauntlet winner and they couldn't do it because there was too few series 5 and 4 cards to put in the snap pack. I mean, looking at this, the most recent card released in this deck was Toxin, who was
Toxin.
released 8 months before the actual tournament began.
Right?
You've got Series 3 cards: the Hood, Bast, Rocket, Falcon, Mysterio. Uh, sorry, Series 3 before cards because Bishop, Rocket, Iron Man, they're all before Series 3. The only
Yeah.
high series cards in this deck are Hitmonkey, who was a Series 4, and Sable, Nico, and Toxin, who are all Series 5. So this deck was built for 21,000 tokens with no card, newer than October, and it destroyed Golden Gauntlet in what many people consider a tier 0 Thanos meta, where Thanos was running so many different
Yeah.
series 4s and 5s, and yet budget bounce took it down. I think this speaks to comfort. The person playing this deck is Derek, and if you know the high elo Marvel Snap scene, you know Derek is one of, if not the best player in the world. He makes a lot of different decks, and he's comfortable with a few decks. Bounce is one of them. He's very comfortable with Bounce, a very comfortable Bounce player, and he took Bounce all the way. So this, I think, speaks to a lot of players that had this old archetype that they loved. They felt it fell behind. If it's right, if the meta is right for it, you can always come back.
Yeah, I think you brought up some really great points. One of the things that I think Derek correctly identified in Golden Gauntlet 1 was that Thanos was going to be, the best deck. And a lot of people brought it. I can't remember the percentage of play, but it was the highest one. And specifically, Thanos has a pretty difficult time putting points on the board up to a certain extent, right? They're very good. They had good tech cards because it was the ongoing list and it was a tech list. Both of those are pretty decent, but they do have kind of a point ceiling. And Derek specifically was able to avoid another highly played card during that tournament, Shang-Chi, with his bounce list, because you're bringing all those cards back and then you're repositioning your point output on the last turn of the game.
Absolutely. I do think, especially with the being able to reposition your points, that's probably the strongest thing this deck does. Well, I mean, I guess obviously because bounce. But yeah, I do think even Smlz mentioned if you hit the meta the right way. I don't even think this list needed to hit the meta the right way, to be honest. I could see Derek winning with this list today. I
Yeah.
could see anyone winning with this list today. It doesn't even have to be the best player in the world, Derek. Like, there's a lot of people who could just bring this and probably win. And so I think, like, you might not necessarily win by entering, but you'll definitely have success. Like, as long as you're comfortable, like Smith said, with the deck.
It is a
Absolutely.
good deck, and somebody can definitely qualify with this exact list.
Yeah, another
100%.
shout out is like Doc Guapo. He's been playing really well, got into top 10. He's a notorious one trick, plays a different version of Bounce. He runs Beta Ray Bill, Sasquatch. But Bounce has been doing very well in general. I think Bounce players are feasting. It's very easy to drop priority. I think Derek had a good meta read, but even like this deck doesn't really die to Killmonger. Like the series high series card Sable is very easily replaceable actually because if you bounce her twice, she's a 1/6, a 1/4. America Chavez has gotten a lot better since the time of this deck
Right?
being
Yeah.
built. So like she's a very cheap card that like punts. It's a 1/5 in points if you're able to get the buff out. And like Iron Man's just like that X factor that like it's like can they win this lane or not? If you have Iron Man in your hand, you can always swing a lane most of the time against most decks in the meta.
Yeah, Xenaid, you brought up a great point that I would like to do for each of these decks. Are there any changes you would make to bring this to Golden Gauntlet 3? Yeah, the qualifier 3.
I think I would change Sable for Chavez. I mean, Chavez is a 1/5. You're getting 5 points every time you play Chavez. You're getting 4 points every time you play Sable, if they play that Sable affected card. And because you're a bounce stack, you're probably affording every single card in your hand. So you can realize all 5 points of value from Chavez, except if you play her on the last turn, in which case you're still utilizing 3 after it gets hit by Bast. This deck, definitely I could see winning it again, something like that. And maybe the only thing that could maybe you could add here is a Sage, but I think that Sage is just not fitting in this deck based on you wanting to do Mysterio Hit Monkey stuff. You don't really have room to
Mm-hmm.
play a Sage. So I think this deck, the only thing I'd really change is take a Series 5 out for a Series 1, which again speaks to how budget Bounce really is.
Absolutely. Also, now you don't even have to worry about Killmonger, and I don't think necessarily teching into Killmonger is the best idea, and like in general. But like Mysterio doesn't need to be here. I don't know what you would replace it with, because to be honest, I haven't looked too far into Bounce. But it just doesn't feel like it. Just feel. I don't know how to say it exactly, but it something with the Mysterio feels a little off. I know it
Disables
enables
Hit
the
Monkey,
Bishop.
right? It disables Hit Monkey and Bishop.
It does help with the hit monkey, I guess. So yeah, it's probably fine. I do like the Mysterio in general, especially because you can play it and then it gives you a little bit of that information asymmetry
It
of
also helps a
where's
lot.
Mysterio?
It also helps a lot with Juggernaut.
Yeah, for sure. I almost wonder if you can get a Merlin in here. It's a little bit extra, but it feels like a Merlin deck
I
to
mean, if
me.
we were going that
I would
direction,
not play Merlin.
I don't think I'd
this
fit
this deck's
Merlin
so
in here.
hand. You guys talked about this last week, right? When you were talking about needing to worry about hand size, right? Like you're just clogging up your hand at that point. You're already clogging up your hand being bounced. I would not play Merlin.
The other thing with Merlin in this deck is it's not a deck where you have much Merlin fodder for cards like Polymorph and Once in Future. I mean, your Mysterios are going to be 3 power. if you polymorph that, you're spending 3 points of invest. You're spending three costs of investment on a card, essentially. There's also cards like Bast is really doing Merlin's work here. Cards that would be once in future fodder, like Mysterio and Hood, are getting put to a significant amount of points on the board as well. Do you really need to ramp in this deck? The only card that costs more is Iron Man, and you can Bast an Iron Man, play the Iron Man on 5, and then do like Mysterio, Hit Monkey, and then a 9 power Rocket Raccoon. Stuff like that. I think that really Merlin just also, what are you replacing for him? Are you replacing a bouncer for Merlin? Are you replacing Mysterio? Then you can't really justify the Hit Monkey. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Merlin here. I think Merlin has more of a place in the Guapo style of bounce a lot, one that runs werewolf and has more sort of fodder pieces on the board.
Yeah, just for accessibility for the podcast listeners, the 12 in this list is the Hood,
We
Silver
should probably
Sable,
start with
Bast, Rocket Raccoon, Nico Minoru, Toxin, Falcon, Mysterio, Bishop, Hitmonkey, Beast, Iron Man. According to Denish's Mysterio feeling weird, a cool shout if you just enjoy the card is Grandmaster. He allows some like double bounce shenanigans. It lets you play your Hitmonkey out early and then return him to your hand a lot more often. Very cool interactions with Grandmaster that if people aren't used to seeing, like unless you play against Doc Wapo like 5 times a day, which I do, but a lot of people can get caught off guard, and you can win like 1 8 cuber, which in Conquest almost always seals the deal. So yeah, you're learning like alt lines that your opponent might not expect.
That's a great
Grandmaster's a good
call
call.
out. Great call out, Grandmaster. We ready to go to the next deck?
I think we are. So the next deck, the one that won Golden Gauntlet 2, which, if I remember correctly, was the only Golden Gauntlet to take place over multiple days,
Yep.
was
So far.
Arishem. So we have interviewed Roram already on the podcast about his Golden Gauntlet win in his Conquest strategy, but now it's time to assess his deck. So a lot of cards in this deck have gotten nerfed. Juggernaut was a 3/3.
Let's start off this time with reading the deck list.
But we'll start off with the deck list. Surge, Valentina, Shang, Juggernaut, Galacta, Legion, Enchantress, Agamotto, Alioth, Mockingbird, Thanos, and Arishem. This deck has suffered a lot of nerfs since it won Golden Gauntlet. Surge losing a point of power, Shang-Chi only hitting one card, Juggernaut 3/3 to 4/5. I believe this was still one with +3 Galacta, though I could be wrong there.
No,
Enchantress,
but Thanos in hand.
Thanos in hand, Enchantress, side grade to 5/8, probably worse for this deck that's looking to go tech card plus Juggernaut. There is a lot of nerfs that this deck hit, and yet I'm still not confident that this is a bad deck. I think that Roram had a great comfort with this deck. He was playing Arishem for pretty much the entire month beforehand. And yeah, I mean, Arishem really has not. I mean, the card has changed, but the style of shoving these generic good value cards into the Arishem deck has not changed much since its release. So the only thing that really changed was Thanos starting in hand, which was a change made months ago for this deck. What do we think about Arishem in Golden Gauntlets going forward? Because I know a lot of small grassroots tournaments also ban Arishem in Conquest.
I got a hot take here. An Arishem deck will make it to every top 8 as long as it remains in like a playable form. It is such a snap equity deck because you have one-sided information. All Arishem is in any shape and form is ramp with some tech cards and cards that can kind of pay off from it, like a Mockingbird, right? So some of the 5s have changed. Maybe you're not playing Legion anymore. There's a ton of the activate on into turn stuff. So maybe you're playing Cosmic Ghost Rider instead. But those cards are still viable, right? All you're doing is you're playing some haymakers with some tech cards, and then you're getting discounts on random BS that you get to snap about, and your opponent has no idea why. Like how I know I'm not the only one that gets frustrated whenever a location shows up. But what is the location that makes cards cost 1 more at the on turn 5?
Dream Dimension.
Yeah, Dream Dimension, right? So today had someone play Mobius, an Arishem generated Mobius, and there's a Dream Dimension. Like, come on, man.
We've all had
Yeah.
our fair share of Airsham losses. I know I had one recently where I lost to an Airsham generated nightmare, changing an
Right?
Airsham generated Modoc into an Iron Man for 8 cubes. I
Right?
don't know. I just had
It's
to get
just
that off
it's
my
just
chest. I've
it's
been mad about
wild.
that since it happened.
I
And
don't
that
think
is
anyone feels worse. I think Conifer in top 16 or top 8 played against Arishem that drew Quinjet on 6 games in a row.
oh my
Like
Yeah.
god.
that is a tilter. And he like clawed the match back. He think he was like invisible. But if I was against Arishem and they drew Quinjet on 1 and like my deck has no way of dealing with it, 6 games in a row, it's like, you know, when they like always have Shang-Chi, they always have the card they need. That's just like that's a conspiracy theory waiting to happen.
And who
That's
can
another
forget
frustrating part.
Conifer
Like
losing to the Quake?
another really difficult thing to snap against a deck like this. And by the way, whenever we're talking about Airshim, all the current builds of Airshim are 37 card Monty right now, right? They're I'm going to fill my deck with a ton of crap. You have no idea what I'm doing. But you also cannot play around cards like Shang-Chi, right? So I was playing a Darkhawk deck today, same deck that I was playing against the other Airshim deck I lost against. I played my Darkhawk on 5, reasonably secure because there's 27 cards left in the deck. My 59 power Darkhawk gets Shang-Chi'd by the Shang-Chi they put in their deck. Like, you have to play those odds though. You have to play into the fact that they're not going to be able to get around it, right? Because I played my my Darkhawk, and then on turn 6 I was able to play Cassandra Nova, right? Like, that's winning. You have to bet on that. But in a conquest match like that, you're going to lose 8 cubes.
Absolutely. I also agree that Airsham is the best in the format, especially in Conquest. I'm strongly pro banning Airsham, but I also understand the devs not wanting to ban a card. But yeah, I do think the information asymmetry, we've gone over it quite a bit. Insane in Conquest. But another thing is, like, it's not inconsistent either. You're even your low rolls, you're putting out enough numbers to beat other low rolls. Like, you're kind of functioning as the floor of the meta in ladder, but now it's the floor of the meta in Conquest, in the sense that, like, sure, you're still going to get these ridiculous high rolls. I lost to Arishem generated Stardust with a Kang Shang-Chi. That was a thing that I lost a Conquest match to.
You
And
mean
he
Kang-Chi?
yeah, and they played both of them on the last turn. And so I got shanged and also Stardusted. And it's just like, okay, I should have just seen that coming, I guess. It's like, what it's ridiculous. And yeah, and obviously you get the payoff in Conquest a lot more because it's a shorter time period to you just get more value from it because now the opponent has to win 5 in a row. But
Now, I will say that I do think Airshim can lose to itself quite a bit.
absolutely, it
Yeah.
can low roll. But even the low rolls, from what I've found, you mentioned a lot of them are 37 card Monty. I've started building with the Cry, which is an Airsham player. They play a lot of Airsham. They hang out in like the Husky and Roram Discord servers quite a bit. I started Airsham deck building, and it's pretty consistent. Like, if you just add a blink in, and then you cut Thanos, and then you keep Agamotto because his spells are stupid, and then you keep like Kang. Like, even without a Mockingbird, it's putting out pretty consistent numbers. You'll usually draw 3 to 4 of your deck cards, and if you look at what these cards are, it's like Juggernaut, Legion, Galacta, which I don't even think should be here, by the way. But like Valentina, you're getting ridiculous value even on games where you're not hitting someone with an Airsham generated Stardust with a Kang and a Nambaku. It can beat itself, but it's a lot rarer than you'd think it would be with 12 extra cards in the deck.
And you also
Yeah.
get to retreat. You get to retreat on those games.
I've
Absolutely.
learned the Snap community is not great at the skills needed to beat Airsham. I think the 2 skills that are most effective against Airsham, the muscles that you need to train, are the Bully Snap muscle. Essentially, when you can recognize Airsham not having like Valentina on 2, like when they don't have a playable 4 on 3, then you got to know, like, hey, these are the games where you got to get them out before they draw their bullshit. Because if you can't get them out, then they're gonna take advantage of the variance over a longer period of time. So you want to really make the Airsham players like uncomfortable. If you know they got Thanos in their deck and they're playing like a naked Reality Stone turn 1, like those are things like just indicators that you really want to look for. Also, if you've been in touch with the Snap community, like you're around a lot of snirkles, Airsham players get a lot of hate. I just wanted to take this time to just be like, hey, this is Golden Gauntlet. This is like the tournament. Everyone's playing decks to have fun. Like bring whatever deck you want. Airship is not like the favorite deck per se to any like experienced player. So that's why I'm also like just here to give tips on how to beat it. If you hate Airship, find me in the Discords. We can talk about it. But also like if you like playing Airship, just go play Airship. It's not this unbeatable deck. And I think
So
more
that
people just need to be faced with like skill issue. Come on, find your way to beat it because I think most of us have beaten a ton of Airship on our way to qualify to Worlds.
So I think we talked a bit about how good Airshim is. I want to point this out. Some stats we have from qualifier 1 and qualifier 2. So Airshim was 5% of decks and had a 49.7% win rate. And then in qual 2, it was 7.8% of decks with a 50.2 win rate. So it's not unbeatable. Like I think Roram, for instance, who knows Airshim in and out, knows when to snap and retreat. That's the important part that's going to set those folks up. They're going to make it. Like I said, I predict that we're going to have one in top 16 of every qualifier or every event that we do until it's changed, really. But it's going to be the players who are good with that deck.
I think another point of Arishem that you also really need to look at, especially from like a returning player's perspective, you don't need all the fancy bells and whistles. I mean, now that Thanos doesn't start in hand, you don't need Thanos. You don't even need Agamotto. You don't need Kang. Arishem is a very like generally accessible deck. If you're still coming back from like 2023, early 2024, and you bought Blob Zola is a perfectly acceptable thing. I've lost in Golden Gauntlet to a Blob Zola Arishem deck. It was just too many points that my deck couldn't really keep up with it, and I also had to bet that they didn't draw it. It's very, very more budget than it looks. I mean, from this perspective, you're really looking at like maybe you might not own this Series 5 card. Well, guess what? You can use a Series 3 replacement. You're not drawing it most of the time anyway. But
Yeah.
in general, I think Arishem is a solid, safe choice. But again, with all decks, make sure you have a comfort level with it.
So like we did,
Arishem is all about snapping, in my opinion. So if you are comfortable with your snaps in Arishem and you're doing well on the deck and you're winning your games, definitely a good choice to bring.
So, like we did for the first deck, I'd like to talk about, what we do to change. I think the entire deck changes. So let's just talk about a few cards you think are worth mentioning. I already mentioned one I think would be very good in this upcoming tournament, which would be Cosmic Ghost Rider. I think Cosmic Ghost Rider has some very good targets at this point in time.
I think another card that you might start to see pop up in more Arishem decks is I think Shang-Chi might get cut. There's not a lot of great targets for Shang right now. So I think you also kind of want to run a little bit another 4 there. Maybe you see something like a Gwenpool. I know Roram is running a was running a Gwenpool in his latest build. Kang especially definitely has a place in
Oh yeah,
Arishem.
Kang's good.
I know Denish seemed pretty upset, but Dennis, you've been talking to Cry, who's one of the most well-known Arishem players. What do you think about Arishem deck building? Are you just in this, I'm just going to jam all the tech cards and not worry about points?
So yeah, I think that this is more of a tech style of Arishem. Obviously, it's 34 card Monty. It has the Thanos and the Agamotto, so it's not all tech. It's also points with Mockingbird, but it's a lot tech. Like I consider Legion. It's not really a tech card, but it's kind of a tech card. It's got like a Juggernaut, a Shang. So I think if we're gonna bring this version of Arishem, you'd want to keep the nature of it having tech cards. And even in that case, I do like the Kang and like that kind of thing. I think I agree with cutting Shang. I don't like it, but Stardust is a pretty good card that you probably want. Mobius as well. Now that we've seen this shift over to these board wide tech cards, they're good in Arishem. So like, I mean, over Kang, over even Surge. I don't think Surge is correct in Arishem either, to be honest. Because what I find is with Arishem, you want to be planning out your turns pretty far ahead with what you already have in hand and being able to maximize your points. Like, oh, I have a Juggernaut. I want to play Juggernaut on turn 6. Surge can make that a little awkward because now you want to play your top decks and you can't see your top decks. And so, yeah, things like a Mobius, a Stardust, and
I think Surge could pretty easily be Iron Patriot, right? Being able to
absolutely
play 4 on turn 3 after you drop the Iron Patriot down.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Patriot is the best card in the game. I think your curve like needs to fit a bit more for cost if you're playing Iron Patriot, because the list, yeah, Torch is not the best 3 cost in the game. It's Smlz, or best card in the
Well,
game.
we said best card.
Well, Torch is still not the best card in the game right now.
Absolutely is. We'll get into this on
Yeah,
another
we'll
time.
we'll
But
get there when we get there. Now that Shadow King's
Torch
a
is the
2
best
again,
card.
we don't care. But with the Kragan deck building for Erisham, he shouts out like Isan Blob. Like he just plays cards that have inherently good value with Erisham that you're just able to slam down ahead of curve. So like you just want to get that priority, make your opponent have answers. A lot of cards are greedy. Decks are greedy right now, not running Shing, etc. So you get away with slamming Isan down. You get away with slamming the Blob down. You don't need the tech cards as much.
Yeah.
I do think Surprise Shang-Chi is something he runs, but he cuts Juggernaut, so I would rather just run Juggernaut over Surprise Shang-Chi. Although the move decks, right, have started cutting a lot of tech as well, so I would assume that's his way of dealing with move. With the Surprise Shang-Chis, I think Shang is good into a lot of matchups, just because with Airsham, you have the points to beat a lot of matchups already, so you kind of want the tech to, like, out scooch certain matchups. I don't think Shadow King is of high value enough to play in the Airsham build. I know Kragan cuts Thanos for King because you want to be able to pack a lot of punch in like smaller packages. So like you don't really, he doesn't cut Thanos. He cuts Agamotto for King because you want to just like be more consistent in terms of I'm getting this good card that's unexpected and doing things. I think the Agamotto plays are a little bit too face up. I think for him.
Yeah. We ready to move on to deck 3?
I think we are. Deck 3. Very weird meta read.
Very
Merc
weird.
Ball, Moonstone with Electra. So, for context, this was very shortly after Invisible Woman First Steps was released, in a time where we still had +4 Havoc. We still had like 4/7 Fantasticar. All of this stuff making end of turn really good. And the deck that won was Ant Man, Elektra, Goliath, Mercury, Sam Wilson, Captain America, Gorgon, Captain Carter, Captain America, Cosmo, Moonstone, Cannonball, and Spectrum. Lot of what it seemed most similar to me was it seemed very similar to an ongoing list that I personally really enjoyed in February of 2025. It was a Moonstone ongoing deck with like an anti-venom in a cage, so it was a little bit different than what we see now. But what this deck was really using as well was a unexpected, largely unknown at this point interaction between Mercury and Moonstone, where if you had Mercury and Moonstone in the same lane, Moonstone, according to the abilities, copied Mercury's text fully, and Moonstone could move. So you could just put a 2-cost card in Moonstone's lane and completely reallocate your big point of power card. So this was a very cool meta read. It utilized the mechanic that a lot of people didn't know, and it ended up winning the entire thing. What do we think about Merc Ball ongoing? And granted, this deck has only seen one nerf, I believe, and it was Cannonball's 2-point nerf.
Mm-hmm.
That's it since release. Or that's it since this deck won.
Yeah, and another great read from Fox for this deck was that the Invisible Woman deck had kind of a ceiling of point output, and this deck can fairly easily go over the top. It is not uncommon to have lanes at 40 plus power, like have one lane at 40 something and have another one at 30 something with this deck. And then on top of that, the ability to use your Cannonball Mercury to take out the big threat. Electra, surprise card that nobody would have expected, targeting the 1-drops from the Invisible Woman First Steps decks. Just a great read for the tournament. And one
Yeah,
thing I want to point out here is Mercury was the newest card. And when was Mercury released? Was that March?
Mercury was released in June, so it's a
Was it June?
bit
Okay.
later than expected. But I mean, yeah, this deck has a lot of cards released this year, granted, but a lot of them, I mean, Mercury was released at a Series 4, Gorgon, LTM, Carter, Season Pass. The only Series 5 new releases that this deck brought were Goliath and Moonstone, and both of those were from multiple months beforehand. Moonstone was a January release, and Goliath was an April release. So you had a good amount of time to get these cards for this deck. And also, it's running a lot of. Also, sorry, Sam Wilson, but that's a pass card as well. The only like low series cards are like Ant Man, Elektra, Captain America, Cosmo, Spectrum. Those are pretty low series. Those are like a third of the deck, completely free. Like Electra was a card you got like on your third day of playing, and it's
Hmm.
winning tournaments because it's countering what many people thought was the best deck in the game. It's crazy.
Yeah, and Gorgon's
Abs-
not even needing this deck anymore.
Absolutely not. Although, to be honest, in a conquest format, probably run it anyways. Because, like, I don't want to play against Arishem. That sounds awful. And they'll be there. I want to touch on Spectrum a little bit because I don't think we've talked about Spectrum here before. Spectrum's a weird card. I think it is constantly underestimated. And anytime I see someone pick it up, they just have success with it, but nobody plays it. Like I don't see Spectrum on ladder, and when I do, it's like everyone's doing it or no one's doing it.
Hmm.
There's been like 4 or 5 different times throughout Snap's lifetime where someone just says, "I kind of want to play Spectrum today," and then it just goes crazy. Like I know there's been one where I was talking with content creator Chaos Pro, and I literally just said on a whim, we should just try Spectrum, and then we went up like 700 SP in one day. It was just ridiculous. And then I like that same week Dexter did it as well, or before or after, I don't remember. Around the same time though, and he also had success with that. And so it's like Spectrum, pretty much. It seems like any meta, it can just work as long as you're not getting Enchantress in 3 lanes. Because like it puts up pretty consistent points nowadays with the Carter and the Goliath. You can pretty consistently hit like 25, 25. I think Spectrum is a great shout for pretty much whenever.
I mean, I can add to that Spectrum thing. Even before Carter and Goliath back in February, I got 500 SP in a day with this deck with a similar version of Spectrum ongoing. This deck, when you climb on it, you climb. It's a
I mean,
very fun deck, and I think it's pretty underplayed throughout its entire lifespan since Spectrum got buffed to a 6/7.
it's also worth noting that I think it was top four where it was Spectrum ongoing mirror match. Well, not mirror match. Their decks were slightly different, but it was two Spectrum ongoing decks going at it in the semifinals.
I mean, these guys are just lucky that Butt eliminated me because I am the ultimate ongoing hater. I think I was running Enchantress at the time, and I was one of the few people because um, decks like Sora decks are allowed to run Enchantress. I do think a good shout in this metagame is not the Spectrum deck, not necessarily just the Spectrum core, but the Destroyer core with Cosmo armor, etc., are also ongoing cores. And
Mm.
Destroyers just received a recent buff. Their power output gets a little bit out of hand. I mean, with Jocasta releasing and everything, you're starting to see a lot of EOT decks return, but not necessarily with the glory that they had in their prime with the nerfs that they received. So this deck does look like it's going to play into good matchups. However, Enchantress is actually a good card now, and there's more Enchantress than ever, right? So the Tribunal players are suffering. I would say that honestly though, an honest Spectrum ongoing deck in the hands of a well like experienced player will probably make top 16 very easily.
Yeah, for changes for this deck, I think I don't know how I feel about Electra still right now.
The thing with Electra right now was that was the meta call because Invisible Woman First Steps relied a lot on its ones. It was either
Hmm.
getting like a 1/6 with Hydra Bob. It was some builds were using, I believe some, nope, Spider Ham was later. But you also had cards like Sunspot. Sunspot was very core to these
Hmm.
original decks, and that card was playing for up to 20 points because you were getting the double Invisible Woman First Steps with Prodigy. So Sunspot, Electra played for over 20 points in some games here. I think that was the meta read then. Now I might elect for like a Spider Ham. Spider Ham, something that can turn off a lot of these activate cards in hand. You get to see what you turn off as well, so you know what you don't have to play around anymore. I think Spider Ham is what I would put in that one cost slot there. I'm also not sure about Oregon here. Maybe adding something like a 2/3 tech card. Maybe, I don't know if you're worried about. Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about Airsham, you can obviously still run the Gorgon. But if you're worried about maybe something different, maybe a Shadow King in here. Shadow King and ongoing, that's pretty good. A lot of your power is like boosted power, ongoing power by the means of like Carter, Captain America, Goliath. Like, I mean, Shadow King could be pretty decent here. I mean, I ran a Moon Girl ongoing deck a few months ago. I didn't play it in tournament, but I mean, I had a lot of success with it on ladder running Invisible Woman Shadow King. Invisible Woman 2/4, another very nice shot for these ongoing decks if they want to dodge that Enchantress deck, because Invisible Woman eats the Enchantress.
One thing I
Absolutely.
one thing I
Oh,
would be concerned with bringing an ongoing deck right now is danger. Quite honestly,
yeah, danger definitely beats them up pretty badly. Although you do have the shield, so
I would play armor. I would unironically find 3 slots, play armor, Cosmo Destroyer. Like play those 3 cards, and like it gives you a very strong alt line. There's
I think
also the
Cannonball comes out then.
yeah,
absolutely.
Cannonball. That's just like an alternate like version of the deck. I don't think people really see this as a Merkball deck as much as an ongoing deck. I know the Merkball line's like interesting, but I do think the Destroyer Prop X lines are also like very good as well. I think a lot of decks can't interact in the face of like Cosmo Destroyer. I do think this deck does suffer against Cerebro. Um, I mean, it does. Like Smith's making a weird face at me, and I'm like,
I don't like
Cer-
Cerebro. I also want to take this quick chance to talk about Cerebro in a conquest format. I think, just speaking to most players here, I think if you really just want to go 5-1, and that's like your tournament experience, I think a deck like C2 is a really good choice. But I'm gonna make my hot take proclamation. I don't think Cerebro will ever win a Golden Gauntlet event, just because there are some games where just locations do not go your way. And on ladder, you can retreat for one. That's why Cerebro is one of the best ladder decks in the entire game, which I have my reservations about. But in a conquest format, you just can't run. If you get that one bad matchup, that one guy with you get match up against Xenaid and his big red skull, you match up against a Lady Deathstrike deck, you match up against a Echo deck, and all of a sudden your Cerebro gets turned off. All it takes is one bad matchup, and then you're just done for it with Cerebro. I think it's a reasonably good deck to go 5-1 with. Not quite sure about winning the whole thing with Cerebro, but I don't know. I wouldn't. I'm a little bit scared of Cerebro and Conquest just because it's such an accessible deck that a lot of players play. Not too concerned if I think I can really go far, because I think Cerebro just not a deck that can really go the distance in a Golden Gauntlet format.
I mean, Cerebro's just like the new Mr. Negative. Like, if they have a Red Skull, you lose. If, like, Negative, you have Mobius, you lose. But I think Cerebro has a much better matchup spread than Negative does, because it's much harder to run Red Skull than it is to run Mobius. Like, I know, and honestly, Cerebro is one of those budget decks. Like, I know that it's not one of the winners, but it is those things where if you are a Cerebro enjoyer and you play in a Golden Gauntlet format, you'll probably have a good time. I think I spent a lot of time looking at the top place people. A lot of them are just like there's a lot of Cerebro players up there. There's like 4 or 5 in top 32 a lot of the time. And I'm praying I get matched against them. And then I get matched against Butt. Like, I don't get it. Like, I wish I have a free win, but it's tough out here.
Yeah, another thing before we move on to the next and final Golden Gauntlet deck, I've been staring at the list now for about 2 minutes, and I think what I would do is I would replace the Merc Ball package for a Professor X package, and then you can even justify a Destroyer. And you might think that's not great in closed format, but like Mr. Fantastic gives +3. Put it in a Moonstone, that's +6. And so now it becomes pretty easy actually to win a prof lane where you whiff. And I think, yeah, Mr. Fantastic Profex, obviously it'd have to be experimented with because, like, you might even need to cut the Gorgon at that point for, like, an armor for, like, backup resources. But that's definitely something to look at if someone wants to try that out. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Armor's pretty good into the metagame with Destroy being one of the top decks in Infinite.
hmm I do think Destroy is going to be a lot more prominent in this specific Golden Gauntlet qualifier 3, than it has been in the past, especially with Mora, because that's a good conquest card.
Another really good budget deck.
hmm
Yeah, a lot of players already have all the cards for Destroy. I believe the Is X23? I think X23 and Nico and I guess Moira now are the only three cards above a Series 3 in that deck, which is very surprising. Null's a Series 3 now. But
Yeah, I mean
anyways,
Dormammu if you want to play the base version.
I mean, when we get to Dormammu, then I think we're trolling a bit, but we'll see. When we
What a
get to
hater.
the last deck, it's discard, not Hella. I know Denish not too happy, but it does run Gambit, so there's some consolation there. This was the Electric Flames deck. Here it is: Scorn, Blade, Morbius, Colleen Wing, Gambit, Corvus Glaive, Lady Sif, Dracula, Proxima Midnight, Modoc, Khonshu, and Apocalypse. Let's just look at the cards series first of all. Series 5 with Scorn, Blade, Morbius, Colleen, Gambit. These are all three or below. Corvus is a Series 4. Lady Sif, Dracula. Both of those are below Series 4 5. Modoc is a Series 3 now. Apocalypse you get day one of playing the game. And then you got Proxima Midnight, who I believe is a Series 4 now. And then Khonshu, who's the only card in this deck released in 2025. Every single other card has been released earlier than that. You're only running two Series 5, two Series 4 cards, I believe. Just, I mean, what an amazing budget deck for this format. And this is the most recent winner as well. This isn't the winner all the way back in June, which was budget. This won literally last Golden Gauntlet tournament, which was just over a month ago. Incredible how these still lower series cards can still punch up. I know a lot of the complaints with Snap are about this economy that's so hard to catch up and get a good deck. Look at this. This deck was pretty much all made until Khonshu came out in March of this year, which is now over half the year ago, which I know is kind of crazy to say, but this deck is pretty old, pretty set, and I mean, pretty good. Great mana read by the Electric Flame. Seeing that there was a lot of low interaction stuff, and the only like over the top combo decks were really negative and Hella, and both of those saw an appropriate amount of Mobius and Stardust to deal with. This deck also, it is a Khonshu deck, so you might think it was pretty weak to Stardust, but it also has this entire non-Stardust game plan where it just does Dracula Apocalypse, and it stacks another lane with like Morbius, and it's just good. I mean, you have these Scorn procs going off, you have Gambit disrupting your opponent, you have Modoc, who's a 7 power card. I mean, you're getting these big power cards still, even in the face of a Stardust deck, which is purposely lowering its ceiling by running a non-synergy piece. I really think that if you want to take a deck like Destroy or a deck like Discard to a Golden Gauntlet, especially in one where the entire meta is hyperteching for a few decks, which I think this upcoming one will be, by the way, with decks like Move and Cerebro seeing a large portion of the meta, I think Discard is still a pretty good choice for Qualifier 3.
Yeah, 100%. I think Discord is very similar to Spectrum in the sense that, like, it's just a good deck. Like, it's never not going to be honest. There's not a lot of things that are good into it. Usually you're even at best. And, like, you're not going to be able to stop it from doing what it's doing. You just have to outpoint it. And like the only thing that it's kind of been starting to get attacked a little bit more is the Dracula. Dracula used to just be like an unstoppable force where it's like, okay, well, Dracula's here now. But now, of course, there's like a Cosmic Ghost Rider and Red Guardian. There's a couple ways to turn it off. But Dracula is playing as like a 421, which is big. Gambit is another exceptional card in the list that I don't think was touched on too much, as well as Proxima and Scorn. Like, these cards are ridiculous, to be frank. Morbius plays for like 214. Name another 214. It doesn't happen. And so, yeah, it's just these ridiculously large points that, similar to Spectrum, if you just hop on this list, it'll probably work most of the time.
You know, according to a good close friend of ours, Sauron used to be a 214 back in the day. But
Havoc.
yeah, Havoc.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Goliath can absolutely play for even more than 214 with a Moonstone.
You know, sometimes Adam Warlock.
Adam Warlock.
Imagine if Adam Warlock
This
was
is
214.
Crazy.
This is a little bit of a spoiler for next episode, but I'd argue with the Goliath, and that makes the Moonstone a 446, not the Goliath at
Oh,
214.
well, we could talk about more math next week, but
But I think for discard, I honestly think I'm way lower on discard deck than you guys are. I think it's the middest of mid decks, but that's because I run my favorite tech card. Do you guys know what my favorite tech card is, by the way, right now?
Juggernaut.
No, it's not. I don't
let
run
me
Doug.
guess, Red Guardian.
It's Red Guardian. And like, I'm sorry, but one Red Guardian and this guy's life is over. Also, like, how is this deck gonna come back from that insane Colleen nerf? 2-4 to 2-3? like like how is he ever gonna come back? Now when she discards your score and she's only a 2-5. That buffs another card in your hand. But all bits aside, I think this deck is very consistent for like a non-tech police metagame. It's like the deck that goes under Shang. Although like I'm just saying, if I played against this deck on the way to top 16, Sauron would be farming. And that's kind of my metric for a good deck or not. Does it beat Sauron? Does it beat the Sauron test? And I don't know if this deck beats the Sauron test in a no Shang-Chi metagame.
Yeah, I think so. One thing I'd like to point out here is there's really two popular, discard decks. You're either playing Dakin or you're not playing Dakin, right? And this is the deck that's not playing Dakin. And I think specifically, this deck, it just doesn't fail as often because Dakin can just draw the wrong cards, right? There's so much redundancy in this deck that I think it can play quite a bit better more often. It's gonna win those 50-50s, I think, a bit more. Another thing I want to point out too is the Electric Flame was a comeback player. I think it was mentioned earlier on this pod, but he just loved playing discard. He heard about the tournament. He's like, I don't got really any of the new cards. I'm just gonna bring discard because I want to have fun. I want to enjoy the tournament, and I know how to play the deck well.
100%. I do like highlighting a little bit about the Dakin stuff. The Dakin, I think, is probably the better discard deck, but I know for a fact that people brought Dakin and didn't get first. And so, like, even then,
consistent.
Yeah, probably. I do think it's more consistent.
I think Dakin dies harder to a random Red Guardian.
I think so. Here's one thing where I think it really. We'll go back to snap equity for a second. Dakin is very heads up. Did they Frigga? Did they do whatever else it is? Like they're showing you these points are going to be there, and I feel like the Khonshu just dropping 12 powers randomly. Like this deck has just a little bit more surprise factor to it, I believe, than the Dakin version.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think that the Dakin is actually more surprising because if you're playing Contra, you need to play turn 5 Modok, which literally shows the opponent your hand. Like you cannot hide anything with this deck. Yeah. It's very easy. The only thing that can actually be inconsistent is sometimes you can 50-50 which lane the Contra is going to land in. Yeah. And so that is a little bit face down. But with the Dakin, you can actually pivot the last turn because a lot of time they run Grandmaster and Gambit, and so instead of doing the wild Modok bullseye stuff, you can just Grandmaster Gambit, and that's way more face down in my opinion than playing a Khonshu in the last turn that they saw you have in your hand.
So I will say though, the last turn Khonshu Dracula discards, a lot of people do the math really badly into that. The Dracula will discard a card, then the Khonshu revives a Colleen, which discards a Scorn, or something like that. And all of a sudden, your secured 8 cubes becomes a -8 and you're out of the tournament.
I agree so much. I don't know how many times I've cope stayed against discard. There's no way the points are enough. And then all the things happen and I'm like, oh yeah, I lost.
I think it's also people don't play this on ladder. So people don't get enough practice doing math against this on ladder. And I'm sorry, but if you're just not practiced at doing math, Marvel Snap is just a casual card game. That's the reason Dakin Bullseye does so good, because no one does math. They just, I hope I'm big enough, and then they the two 40 power Dakin spawn in and you're dead anyway. It's I could have done that math. A lot of the decks are face up, but being face up doesn't necessarily mean that your opponent will do the math. I know unless it's Golden Gauntlet, I don't do math while playing Marvel Snap.
That's where you gotta get on the pen and paper meta. Have the pen and paper right next to you when you're playing. Just draw all your math out. I mean, I do it. I'm pretty high ranked. But I'm actually gonna push back on both what Denish and Gunny said here. I think with Corvus, this deck has some variable lines. Are they going to Khonshu on, or you might have a non-Modoc game where you get a Khonshu on 6 to bring back a Morbius? Or are you going to Gambit Dracula? A lot of different stuff here. I think that the way that this deck is positioned, I think Bullseye is a little more unpredictable with the snap equity because you can snap before because you see what's going on in your hand and your opponent. I mean, it's really hard to math out Bullseye in advance because you don't know what scalers they're going to get. You don't know if they're going to get Collector. You don't know if they're going to get something like a Morbius. But I do think that this deck has a little bit more surprise factor than people are believing. I mean, you have Conchu lines, you have Gambit Dracula lines, you might be able to read their Apocalypse slightly wrong in terms of power. Maybe they top deck the Blade. I believe in the finals of the tournament that the person like a Flame was facing, Canadian Alfredo, lost only to a top deck Morbius after a Modoc discard. And you know what happened? Top deck Morbius. Sometimes you just get unlucky with your draws or stuff like that. And I think also this deck is a lot more resistant to that than Bullseye. Whereas Bullseye is more of a combo deck, this is a very consistent deck. You're always going to put up power, where sometimes Bullseye just completely bricks and you have to retreat for 1. Or maybe even 2 if your opponent bet early, like a snap on 1 or 2. I think it's a little unfortunate. But
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, whereas I think the Dakin is combo and this is synergy.
mm-hmm. I think that the synergy based decks also, whereas Bullseye might get you more wins. I mean, let's look at the previous 3 decks. I mean, they were a bounce deck with with 3 bouncers, so you always were pretty much bouncing cards every game. You have a discard deck, which is heavily based on synergy. You have an ongoing deck with multiple routes to win. And you have Aeroshem, which is a very consistent deck at putting out a decent amount of power. I think we are noticing a trend here that combo not too great if you're looking to win at all. Whereas something like a synergy deck is a much safer choice, especially if you can get the correct meta read to it. But anyways, it's time to talk about the location of the week this week. If you see it in Golden Gauntlet, keep prepared. It is Rickety Bridge. Rickety Bridge, end of turn. If there is more than 1 card here, destroy all the cards of that location. So, what do we think are some great cards for this location? You can't say Juggernaut, that's cheating. And how's our game plan going for Rickety Bridge?
So I'll start. Rickety Bridge is interesting because it transforms the game into a 2-lane game, which means it's basically just who can put the most power on the board in those 2 lanes. But also, you need to consider you still need to throw a card in it on the last turn. So a lot of the time, you can't actually end your game with a 6-drop unless you're ramping. You need to end with a 5 and a 1, or like a 6, and then you have to like move a Nightcrawler or something like that. And so it's really important to consider when you're playing cards into Rickety Bridge, because sometimes you'll need to blow up your opponent's cards on specifically turn 5 to force them to play into it on turn 6, or to enable your Juggernaut if that's what you're doing. There's a lot of these really specific things, and before we deep dive further into that, what do you guys think about, once again, do you have any specific cards that are really, really good to play into Rickety Bridge on turn 6? That are commonly run in decks that people wouldn't think of?
Yeah, like Juggernaut. I think Juggernaut's a really good shout. It wins the location. I think it wins every location, but I think Electra is a really interesting one on Rickety Bridge because if you expect them to play a 5+1, you can slam an Electra in the lane and win it. It's not as secure, but I think Negasonic is just better than Electra. It is more of an investment, but it's a guaranteed game winner. Hydra Bob, if you snap it, it moves after the destroy. So Hydra Bob can find its way into it. I think M'Baku also finds his way into it. If you're crazy in your butt, M'Baku finds his way into it. Dracula, if he discards a Proxima Midnight, will find its way into it. There's a lot of ways to get into this location. Vibranium Mines, like obviously any card that can't get destroyed, like has significant value. If this is ever a hot location, you're gonna see Galactus. Like that's the biggest one for people. Am I missing anything else? I think.
You've got the common Colossus tech in that.
Oh right, that was actually running Colossus for a while, and that card rails people on Rickety Bridge.
I do think a good gameplay mechanic to mention is with Dark Dimension, Invisible Woman, and Supergiant. This is end of turn, not end of game. And so this will happen, and then like your Dracula, like Xenaid mentioned, or even like a Squirrel Girl under an Invisible Woman, you'll still be able to get points in there because the location will already have triggered, which is something not a lot of people think of. And so I had a game that I want to talk about specifically with Supergiant because Supergiant isn't a card you'd think of with Rickety Bridge, but obviously I'm playing Hela. And so if I hide my Hela, I play Supergiant on turn 5 even, and then Hela on turn 6, not only are all the unrevealed cards actually going to get destroyed by Rickety Bridge, so my opponent's Thanos, even though it has an orange stone or a soul stone, maybe I go by color.
It's
I
orange.
think it's
It's
soul
orange and
stone.
it's soul. Yes.
Orange stone. Even if they have orange stone, you could still blow up their Thanos because it didn't reveal. And a lot of people don't know that, so you could just abuse that. But also, you can have your Hela, I don't know, put, yeah, like a blade, and you just win an entire lane. Even if they juggernaut you, like, you didn't play cards there anyways. And being able to, if you play Supergiant into the Rickety Bridge, then they can't juggernaut you because the juggernaut won't even reveal. And so they still don't win that lane. And so, yeah, that is a very niche mechanic of it. I'd love to talk more about the gameplay stuff, but I know before we started recording, Gunny, you had a Rickety Bridge story. Do you want to?
So I recently made a deck. I got frustrated with all the ongoing or the end of turn and activate stuff. So I made a fives that do stuff deck. So it's just like Psylocke, Jennifer Kale, and what's her name, Luna Snow, just to get me to get fives on 4. So one of the fives was Legion, and another one was Professor X. So on 5, I legioned Rickety Bridge and blew up their entire board, which was awesome. And then I guessed the correct lane to drop my Professor X in that they didn't play into, and there's no getting out of that, right? I was able to then drop cards in each of the other lanes to win. So yeah, super easy. I do have a point. So talking about Rickety Bridge, you mentioned that it turns into a 2-lane game. So one thing you really want to consider with Rickety Bridge is a lot of decks have cards that enable your deck more. Say, for instance, we were talking about discard just a second ago. I would probably play my Colleen Wing into Rickety Bridge early because I know I want points. I want my Draculas and stuff like that into one of those other 2 lanes. So you want to make sure if you have to know that you only have 8 places to really play for. So if you have those lower point enabler cards, probably playing those in a Rickety Bridge really isn't that bad of a thing to do.
Yeah, I think Quake Enjoyers can also rise up when Rickety Bridge is around. Quake Enjoyers just delete half the opponent's lane. And one really funny shout, I think, Denish, you had a story about this one, is a Rogue when you were playing it. But you can let the people know where that leads.
Yeah, Rogue is fun because you can steal Sam Cap shield, but that might be what you're talking about. That it's a little bit more rare. But when Captain America with the, Sam Wilson was popular, they would often like buff the shield and then move it over. But you could just steal the ability on the shield. Theirs gets destroyed. Yours doesn't. You win the lane. That's a lot of fun for sure. I want to before we move on. Definitely keep talking about Legion and early game prep. But Smlz, do you want to butt in?
Yeah, so going back to Sam Cap, I mean, when that shield was 1 power, I mean, Sam Wilson Captain America was by far the best Rickety Bridge card in the game because you saw that location come up and you could snap. I have a 1 power shield that can't be destroyed, so you got to beat that. But I think Legion is probably one of the best cards in the game for this location. A lot of Legion decks are leveraging Legion as one of the high end ramp pieces. So you could do stuff like, okay, I'm gonna Legion and then I'm gonna play a few one and then I'm gonna play 2 1s and like a 5 and you can't contest all 3 lanes. I also know decks like Hela that Denish plays that do run Legion on these rickety bridge games really like to keep a gambit in their hand, and they can also afford to play something else like a Redshift or a Corvus or a Jubilee or a Ghost Rider to sort of stop one lane that's being contested, and then the other one you just throw a Gambit. Gambit pulls up one of their cards. All of a sudden, your card lives. Their card dies. And all of a sudden at the end of the game, you've got power in a lane. They have no power in a lane, and there you go. You can win. So it's very interesting. Rickety Bridge is one of my favorite locations in the game just because of how interesting it makes it, because it makes it a 2 lane game, but also not really, because a lot of decks do have a little kind of way, whether it be like Hydro Bob or something like that, to get into the Rickety Bridge. I think that Rickety Bridge is a very interesting location and it shifts games quite a bit.
Yeah,
You can go, Gunny.
yeah, you talking about that is whenever a location like this comes up and you're going to be doing locations of the week, I think it's important to talk about how you snap properly into a location like this. So, such as you have a rickety bridge that pops up turn one and you have that Hydro Bob in hand, probably a good idea to just go ahead and hold that card in hand, knowing you can win that lane. Because, all you are then doing is focusing on one lane to win because you're going to be able to take that lane at the end of the game. Whereas if you play that Hydro Bob early, like let's say you've done the thing, the Hydro Bob somewhere else, and then you snap, your opponent just retreats and you've lost those cubes.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure the locations and the cards end of turn order are fully with the order they reveal. Am I right in saying if you play a Hydra Bob before Rickety Bridge flips and then snap it into Rickety Bridge, it still gets destroyed? I could be wrong
I
on
don't
this.
think
No,
so.
it does not get destroyed.
It's
The order goes for the most part like on reveal stuff, then like location effects, and then like end of turn stuff. That goes last, and then end of game.
yeah.
The only exception to that rule is Iron Patriot, if I'm remember correctly.
Yeah, it's Iron Patriot.
So yeah, if you play like Iron Patriot on Rickety Bridge, they play a Mercury there, and both cards get destroyed after that turn. The Iron Patriot will still go off. That's the only exception to this rule.
I think actually Denish might be right because end of turn, if you have priority, your Hydro Bob's going to move.
It's not a priority thing.
Locations
End of turn
resolve separately.
locations go before end of turn cards. The only exception to a card going before a location is Iron Patriot. That's
But
it.
don't end of turn on your turn happen at the end of your turn as opposed to end of
So the
game
end
turn?
at the end of okay, so when the turn ends in Marvel Snap, first you check for end of turn on locations, then you check for end of turn on cards. It's not a priority thing. It's always
No, like
locations go before cards.
There's that location that like pulls a card from your hand, for example.
oh no, I get what
Sakar.
you're saying.
Like Sakar.
Yeah.
No, the one on turn 5.
Grand
The pull-
Central.
Yeah.
Grand
So
Central.
Grand of Central goes off and then end of turn.
Yeah, if it
cards
pulls
go
like
off.
thing first steps, it'll
It's gonna
then
go off.
it'll also like trigger before Makari, so it can pull a Makari out of your hand. Same thing with Sakar. Sakar will pull a Makari out of your hand sometimes, and you'll be depressed. So end of turn effects, locations resolve separately. That was another shout out. You can Morgan a Makari on Rickety Bridge, or Angel is when I was playing my Morgan Makari Angel deck. It would auto win this location as well. Because Angel would fly out and
Yeah.
Makari would also fly out if you can get her back in your hand with like Bastion or something even nowadays with Cerebro decks, so they can do that. So yeah, lots of interactions.
Very.
And it just shows how much of
interesting
nerds we
stuff.
are for freaking knowing them all.
Yeah.
I want to.
It's important to kind of point that out. So we talked about a lot of interactions. Nobody is building their deck for Rickety Bridge. It's important to know how these interactions work because there's a lot of decks out there that have sneaky ways to win a Rickety Bridge, right? So when these locations pop up, you can snap into them correctly if you just understand the things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. I do think the general gameplay mechanics are important to know, and you figure that out as you play. It's almost intuitive. Snap does a really good job. There's a couple things that definitely aren't, but generally they do really good job keeping it pretty intuitive. Everything makes sense once you know the rules, with a couple minor exceptions.
Was
I
that
want to talk
Malekith
on a.
reference?
It is a Malekith reference. I can't stand the fact that that does that. It's terrible. But
So for the
But-
listeners out there, just a quick reference here. Denish had a deck built when Malekith released that was using Malekith as a way to like pull a Corvus and then have a Hella reveal after, without knowing that Malekith cards always revealed after cards in the Super Giant and Invisible Win window. So he was very mad, and
I'm still mad.
It even made it up to Glenn. Glenn even knows Denish because he complained about that. So
I complain about that daily. That is my favorite thing to complain about. Absolutely. I'd love to touch a little bit more on the Legion specifically for Rickety Bridge, and then we'll have Zen touch on like early game prio stuff, and then we can probably call it if no one has anything else. But for Rickety Bridge, specifically with Legion, what you want to think about is Legion can always tie the game almost. Obviously, you could still get screwed by a Colossus or like a Juggernaut, even, but you can almost always tie the game. And so you can snap ridiculously aggressively when you see Rickety Bridge because you can just worst case scenario tie and like okay nothing happened. You have full control then, and obviously you have to be careful of like Cosmo, Eliath, Juggernaut, Colossus, Samcap, Shield, Spectrum. There's a couple things like that, but that would be Legioning at turn 6. Another thing you can do is Legion at turn 5. Smlz touched on this a little bit. The reason you'd want to Legion at turn 5, you want to put one card in each lane, and then maybe you're running an Electra or a Gambit, and you just have a way to take one of their cards off the board. There's a lot of decks that really struggle to play 3 cards on the last turn and like actually fill the board. So if you can fill 2 of the lanes, and you know your opponent doesn't have like a Wolverine or a Juggernaut, these cards again that are still very threatening, then that's also a very, very solid playline to Legion it on turn 5, especially since a lot of the time your opponent will not play a card into it on turn 5, so you only need to play for 2 lanes, especially if you know they don't have a card there already. Because a lot of the time people want to play their 5s on 5, or like their 4s on 5, but they don't have a 1-drop. And it just becomes a little awkward to have the opponent be put in a situation like that, where it's like, okay, you have to play 3 cards now. I wiped your entire board. Good luck. Another thing is turning it off with Legion. Turning it off with Legion is something you'd usually want to do turn 6, because the opponent is realistically putting 2 power in the lane on the last turn. And so it's a free win because Legion's a 5-drop. So you play 5-drop, Hydro Bob. And now Hydro Bob solos the Rickety Bridge lane because it's not Rickety Bridge anymore. And so that's another thing to definitely consider with Legion. If we don't have anything, that's about it for Legion, in my opinion, unless you want to get into like unrevealed Legion, which is different. But I'll let Xenaid touch a little bit on early game prio management with Rickety Bridge, as well as like Iron Patriot placement, and I want to hear more about Merlin.
Yeah, I mean, Merlin and Rickety Bridge is always this weird thing because there's the math. You're like 4 out of 9 to always have the location spell if you play Merlin on 2. It's like not as high as you would like it, or I think it's like 4 out of 9 of 2. You're almost always having a location spell, and the harder part about early priority is this is like kind of a hard denial location because it does prevent all cards from being played on it, but on the condition that there's 2 cards, right? So like the management of power across the board, it depends on like even and odd turns is the kind of concept I would refer to. AKA there's the on turn where you can have a card on the board if you're the solo player. Then there's the off turn where you have to deny the card being in that lane. So for example, if you have like Vivision, right, and you're able to scam it because they didn't play it, you have one on turn with the Vivision proc. Then the next turn they're forced to make it a play into it, so it becomes an off turn. And then things like that are really important because like let's say you're playing Prop X or something that just like has inherent high value from scaling early. You can use this location to get value. It's like same thing playing on like Superflow early or playing on like Lechugia early. Like there's a lot of ways that you can use this location to get priority. But then there's also the thing that Gunny mentions, which is like it sometimes backfires. It sometimes becomes an off turn because people are playing their like Colleen Wings in here. They're playing like their Kate Bishops in here to just easily get destroyed. So it's really 50-50 in that case, unless you're like a deck that has super low investment. Cards like Hood, cards like X23, right? The 1 cost that can be played into this lane really helps swing it. But when we talk about snap dynamics in location, if someone early snaps you on a Rickety Bridge facing, you have to assume one of 2 things. They are destroy or they run away to turn it off. And those are the ways that like high infinite players generally get a lot of snap equity out of it, or they just have Legion in their deck, right? Because a Legion player loses nothing on snapping on Rickety Bridge. Essentially, you're almost guaranteed at least a win or a tiebreaker, right? So Legion players have nothing. But then if you stay in and they're discard or they're destroy, all of a sudden you instantly lost the game. If they're Galactus that run like Wolverine or Nimrod, you've also instantly lost the game. So there's just some things. And then sometimes like I will run armor for like some random reason. I'm like, oh, Rickety Bridge, cool, I got an armor. We're going to win this game. But all of this is like super hidden information tech that is just like, if you're respecting the player you're playing against, I would almost always leave on Rickety Bridge snaps because it's just like you either can beat it or you can't. And when you learn about these interactions that we've talked about, you'll know if your deck can beat it or not. And if someone's snapping into you on the location flipping, it's really something important that you should consider when you're making decisions in the game plan.
Yeah, that's very. There's so many locations out there that, like, if you see a snap on turn 3 and Clog is even somewhat in the format, and there's a bar sinister, you're like, yeah, no way.
But
People
a
are
lot of
snapping
people end
for a
up
reason.
coping. They tend to cope and like it's like like they might be negative, they might be clog, and then they like stay and lose two. And it's like
Yep.
if you're really trying to min max, especially in a conquest format, you really conquest you'll know the deck list, but like on ladder you should learn to win respect.
All right, and that's going to be about it from us here. Quickly, Gunny, mark it. Why should people play in Golden Gauntlet World Championship Qualifier 3?
Yeah, so we brought up some great points. Community, I think, is the biggest one. I would like to convince people to come out and join just because it's so much fun. If you really enjoy this game, join the community. If you're on Discords, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in the community. And on that piece, what I really want to convince people to do is not be afraid because they don't have all the cards. You know, maybe you didn't get all the new cards that came out this month. Like, I don't have several of the new cards that come out this month. Whatever deck you're comfortable playing with that's reasonably good, you can go 5-1 with and qualify for Worlds. And that's just saying, like, that is your main goal, right? And that does not have to be your main goal. Your main goal could just be, I'm going to go enjoy a tournament. If this is your first tournament you've ever entered, I would highly suggest you to not go in with the mindset that I need to win this thing to feel like I have accomplished something. Go join a tournament, figure out what top deck is, because the whole process can be a little confusing, right? I would go in just like, I'm going to experience this. This is how I test out. And then in the future, after you've played in 1, 2, 3, then you can start setting your expectations of like, oh, I would actually like to start placing in this, right? Cosmic Casual, who's one of our mods now, is a great player. He has been playing in, I think, every single Golden Gauntlet. And each time he's just gotten a little bit better, and it's been great to watch him grow. Just a positive person in the community. That's why he's one of our mods now, because of how awesome he was helping everybody. So I think that's those two pieces, right? Don't be afraid to join just because you don't have all the new decks, and go in with just a mindset of, I want to enjoy this tournament.
I mean, definitely. Again, thank you to Gunny for coming on the A Cube Circus show. Also, make sure to play in that World Championship Qualifier 3. It's free. Test your luck. Have fun. Just a day of playing Snap and relaxing and meeting new people. You can find
Right.
Denish at twitch.tv/Denish_Hella. You can find me at youtube.com/@SnapAcademyYT. You can find Xenaid at twitch.tv/XenaidDFT. You can get alerts for all of those channels in the 8 Cube Circus Discord, which will be the top link in the description of our video. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to play in Golden Gauntlet World Championship Qualifier number 3. It's your last chance to qualify for the World Championships in November. And
Ooh, can I spoil something?
You can spoil something.
All right. So I have the World Championship prize, prizes. Do you want to know what they are?
Ooh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me see if I can find these. Here we go.
Ooh,
So
very nice.
we're looking, some of these numbers might be slightly off, but
All right.
I know the top is locked in. Number
Top
one
prize.
winner for Worlds is going to receive 75,000 tokens.
Wow. That's more tokens than I've ever had at once.
25,000 gold, and you guys don't care about the rest, right?
I mean, you do get an exclusive card back as well.
There's only one of one, right?
It's one of one.
One of one.
I believe, is that the only one of one card back in the entire game?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. The most exclusive cosmetic in the entire game. So if you're a cosmetic enjoyer, I mean, one of one is one of one. So, yeah.
Second place, 30,000 tokens and 15,000 gold. Third and fourth is 20,000 tokens and 10,000 gold. And then 5th through 8th is 10,000 tokens, 3,000 gold. And then 9th through 16th is 4,000 tokens, 800 gold. So it's very, very top heavy. We did not bump up the 5th through 16th that much, just a little bit of bump there. But we wanted to make sure the winner walked away with something that was amazing. 75,000 tokens is insane.
Is that like that's got to be like $2,000 of like value for Snap. That's an incredible,
You pretty much get to
incredible
play the game
price
for
point.
free for like a year.
More than a year if you keep your token economy up. I mean,
I mean, that's assuming you're not doing anything else.
I mean, yeah, you can get that. You see people stockpile tokens. I mean, I don't think I've ever been above 30,000 tokens. So 75,000 is a ton,
Yeah,
and I stay on top of a lot of the
yeah.
releases in this game. So
And
you don't really need
registration
much to
is
keep
open
up as well.
now. So
Yeah,
you can find the registration link on the Discord. By the time this comes out, it should be live in game. Just follow the links.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And one last plug for the Discord. I will be hosting coaching and deck building sessions in our channels. Feel free to reach out if you have any reason not to kind of join and you're insecure about like bringing your favorite deck or anything. Reach out to your favorite community. If it's the 8-bit Circus community, then come through and we'll help you get ready. I know we're not playing in it, so we got plenty of time.
yeah.
The
So
8 Cube Circus.
A Cube Circus. Make sure to join the Discord if you want coaching sessions as well before the Golden Gauntlet. I am pretty sad because I believe I do have a commitment on the Saturday that Golden Gauntlet is taking place, but I am free the week beforehand. So if you need coaching, if you need stuff from somebody who's already qualified for Worlds, somebody who interacts with a lot of Worlds qualifiers, who knows a lot of World champions, or knows a lot of Golden Gauntlet champions, please just mention us in the Discord. Let us know that you want some coaching. If you want to coach like V-Hand, something like that, I'm pretty good at that deck. So make sure to join the Discord. Make sure to participate in Golden Gauntlet World Championship Qualifier 3. Thank you to Gunny for coming out and joining us on this episode. And stay tuned next week for a very different take on
Special.
Marvel Snap, Matt, and also another Circus episode. We'll see ya. Have a great day, everyone.